All right. We do want to remind you of a couple of announcements. First of all, next Sunday, this class will not meet at 9:30 a.m. It will meet when? 6 p.m. Correct. 6 p.m. 9:30 a.m. is a masked worship service, except for when I'm preaching. I have a plexiglass shield in front of the pulpit now. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Or think Cecil, one of the two. Both, maybe.
Who's responsible for cleaning it?
That's going to be a big job.
Hey, you wait 3 days and the virus will dissipate and then you can clean it whoever wants to.
Okay. But there will be a mask required worship service at 9:30 a.m. And according to phone calls we've been making to kind of figure out who's coming, it seems like about the other half of the congregation will be here. I'm getting lots of yeses. I'll be there. So we're excited about that. Might need an usher or two if you are planning on being here and would like to volunteer as an usher to kind of make sure we're spread out and following protocols.
I'm very much in the assumption that those that are using the mask, they've been so concerned about the mask and they'll spread out on their own.
I think that's probably true.
Can't have anybody do it, but I'll be here with the mask.
Okay, me too. We're excited about that and excited to see people we haven't seen in a long time and excited that they have an opportunity to come and worship together as well. So that is next Sunday at 10:30. You would have the option to come just like our normal every Sunday 10:30 service. You do not have to wear a mask at that one. You can if you like. And then 6 p.m. is this class will move to 6 p.m. We'll continue the Gospel of Mark. Also remember the golf tournament, Mount Vernon. We have several already that are interested in going. And if you want to know more about that, let me know.
One other thing, Neil went, give me a proposition a while ago, and it's just something to consider. Make it some information from the congregation on this. You mentioned it now, mentioned it later. He suggested instead of Sunday night, obviously they have a box that they have to 10:30. The 11, approximately 11:30. If that would be more conducive rather than Sunday night. So that's just a thought.
Okay. I'll let somebody other than me decide that.
We're taking this in secret, not in public.
Secret ballot, not public.
Oh, gee, ladies, we'll have to write it down.
Okay. If you have your Bible, which you should have, this is Bible class, either electronic form or printed form, one or the other. Turn to Mark chapter 1. You can also look at the screen, but it sure is good to have your own copy so that you are studying it, putting in notes, whatever the case may be. Mark chapter 1, we started with an introduction, a prologue. First verse tells us why Mark is writing the book. And then the next several verses talk about voice, the power of voice. Not the tone, although I'm sure it had something to do with that, but it was not so much the voice itself as how and what and who said it. And then there's a shift. At the end of chapter 1, a shift from voice to touch. And that's where we left off. He has just healed a lot of people. And we looked at the touch of Jesus. Let's start reading now at verse 35. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him. When they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. Well, here is another touch. Even though the word touch isn't used, do you see the touch? It's a little bit hidden. But if you look in there, I think you're going to find it. Want to take a guess?
First verse. Seven took out his hand and touched him.
Verse 35?
I'm jumping ahead of you.
Okay. That might be the next touch we talk about, if you're on past this. I think Jesus longed for the touch of his Father. And if you look at this, he went out, he got up very early, before daylight. He goes off to spend time with his Father. And even though it doesn't use the word touch, don't you know there was a touch involved in that relationship? Even if it's symbolic. After a busy day of healing, he gets up before anybody else in the house. He slips out. It's still dark. He longs for some alone time. He longs for a solitary place. He can just be alone with his thoughts. A place where he can seek his Father without any distractions. And once he finds that place, he prays. He lifts up his heart to the Father. He seeks direction. He seeks guidance. In a way, that's touch, isn't it? Simon and the other disciples start looking for him. They interrupt his time of solitude. And they say, "Everybody's looking for you." The whole town is now speaking the praises of Jesus. They are excited about this healer who is in town. He has become a hometown hero, if you will. He can suddenly heal and he can teach with authority. And they're learning and they're watching and they're listening. And it's all about the voice and the touch combined. And the Greek word translated look here, everyone's looking for you. It's used throughout Mark, but it's always used in a negative way. The word is literally seek, to seek out, to search. In Mark's story, it usually implies someone is seeking out Jesus, but it's with wrong intent. It's not with good intent. It's with negative intent. They want to control him. They want to use him in ways that is not what he is intended for. They look for Jesus in the sense that they have an agenda and they want to manipulate Jesus into following their agenda.
They wanted miracles, not the gospel.
Yes, yes. So what does Jesus say? What is his reaction when they say everybody's looking for you? He knows the intent. What is his statement? Let's go somewhere else. Let's go to another town. Let's go, he says, in the NIV, let us go somewhere else. One translation I checked said, let's go to other towns, plural.
King James is the next towns.
The next towns, plural.
Yeah.
Jesus isn't a faith healer. I mean, he is, but he isn't. He does that, but that's not what he does. Does that make sense? It's not his main purpose. His primary mission is to do what? Preach, teach, proclaim the good news, present the gospel, and let people decide if they want it or not. He is here to proclaim the good news that God is king, and he has a kingdom, and he wants you in it, but it's your choice. He heals because he has compassion, and he can do it. He heals as a sign, as a proof. You need to listen to me. I can do things other people can't do. So I know I'm teaching a little bit differently, but you need to listen to this, and let me show you I have power. His primary mission is not to heal. It is not to impress. It's not to hold tent revival services. His primary mission is to preach, to announce the good news of the breaking of the breaking in, the coming in of the kingdom. He says, that's why I've come. Verse 38, Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages, there's the plural, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. You should mark that statement in your Bible. That is one of the most overlooked statements in all of Scripture. He tells us exactly why he came. It's to preach the good news. And I believe the decision of Jesus to leave Capernaum to travel to other villages in Galilee is directly related to that time of prayer and solitude, and God was giving him direction. Okay, it's time to move on. He sought the Father's touch. People have hidden agendas. For some, it's popularity. For others, it's power or whatever. But they're trying to distract him from his main mission. But he's not biting. It's not why he's here. So this is the Father's touch. This wasn't a touch from Jesus. This is the Father touching Jesus. But he got it by seeking him in solitude and in prayer. If Jesus needed that, don't you think we do? We need it as individuals. We can be centered and focused on our own decision making, on our own agenda, and it may not line up with God's. And he may be trying to get us to refocus. It's time to go to something else. We need his touch. One of our members was telling me, for them, they seek that time in the car, driving. Turn the phone off, turn the radio off. Just you and God. Boy, talk about driving distracted. I was reading this week about Susanna Wesley, the mother of John Wesley, Charles Wesley. She used to put her apron up over her head, and the kids knew, don't mess with Mom if she's got her apron up over her head. She's praying. So however you seek it, whatever your way, your methodology, seek it. We need it as individuals, we need it as a congregation. Congregations need to seek that time of solitude, quiet. Well, let's continue on. Verse 40. A man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus was indignant. That is not a good translation. So I put in, the RSV had it good. Jesus was moved with pity. Boy, doesn't that sound different than indignant?
Mine says
Compassion. He reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately, the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. Jesus sent him away at once with a strong warning. "See that you don't tell this to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them." Instead, he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places, yet the people still came to him from everywhere. In addition to the healing touch, which we first talked about, and the Father's touch, which we just talked about, we also see that Jesus has a cleansing touch. You have to understand there's something of a scandal that goes on in this text. The Greek word for leprosy actually refers to 72 different skin afflictions. Okay, it's not just one. It's many, many, many different skin diseases, if you will, or afflictions. It isn't just what is known as Hansen's disease, which is leprosy, but a person afflicted with even one of these diseases was not just physically sick, but they were also excluded from society, so they were socially sick. They could not come into contact with their family, so they were family sick. They can't go and meet with the church or the synagogue or the temple, so they're spiritually sick. They're sick in a lot of ways. They had to keep at least 50 feet away from people. They had to stay out of the city, out of a village. They're not permitted to attend any type of worship. They live, if you think a couple of months in quarantine is bad, they lived in constant quarantine. That was their life. Most of them for the rest of their life. That includes your family, your friends, your church, your job, everything. They now live on the fringe of society, social outcasts. It's a horrible life. A life of exclusion. You're now kicked out of everything. It's a life of humiliation. A life of stigma. A life of shame. And if you touch a leper, even if it's by accident, you are now at the very least, ceremonially unclean for a period of time to make sure that you don't have it. You know, how long is it today with COVID? You come in, you get a letter from work, somebody's got it. How long do you have to quarantine?
14 days.
14 days. This was the same concept. They had a period of time where they had to make sure that you didn't catch, if you will, the disease. You had to stay out of town until you had gone back through a purification ritual. So for this guy to come up to Jesus, look the wording. A man with leprosy came to him. This guy approaches Jesus. That's scandalous. He is breaking all protocol. He is breaking the law to get to Jesus.
Courageous.
It's very courageous.
He broke it after he was healed.
And he was healed.
But he broke it. He broke it after he was healed. The same law that he broke before.
Exactly right.
He broke twice.
Yes. He's a rebel.
But I feel Jesus had to accept him breaking it. Unless they I imagine in real life, did he just come up behind him and be like, hey? Or, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I would feel like Jesus knew what was about to happen.
Sure, he
and
knows.
He accepted it.
He knows. Absolutely.
What do you have to lose?
Exactly right. He has nothing to lose. If you saw a leper approaching you, what would you do? Put out a hand, stop. Run the other way.
I went to a leper colony in Hawaii on an island.
Did you? You're braver than I am.
Mom, Mother, and Debbie, and I. Maybe that's not what
You don't want to catch what they have. So you would have to stay out of town as well, right? Because it now made you ceremonially unclean. So it was a bit scandalous. But this man presents himself, if you will, to Jesus. And he requests what? What is his request?
Make me a human again.
Yes, make me a human, but specifically, cleanse me. He came to him, he begged him on his knees, if you are willing, you can make me clean. He is begging for cleansing. He asked for cleansing, not just healing. This guy isn't just sick. Society views him as defiled, as filthy, as unclean. He not only needs healing, he needs cleansing. So in some way, he knows and better understands what Jesus is offering than Jesus' own disciples. They still are at the stage where they don't get it. They're the closest to him. But notice he has no doubts about whether Jesus can make him clean. It's just a matter of if you want to. He came, he begged him, if you are willing. I know you can do it. The question is, do you want to? Because remember, he doesn't heal everybody.
Is that actually stated in other places, if you were willing?
I would have to double check that, but I believe it is, yes.
There's everything in the scriptures, of course, there's a connotation to it. And I see the sense that that's what Jesus done. His purpose was to cleanse. It's not, so this was the synonymous with what actually.
Yes, this is more about his purpose and calling than healing. It's more about cleansing. And Jesus has compassion. Instead of being repulsed, which many and most, if not everybody that had come into contact with him previous to this, Jesus' reaction is very opposite of everybody else's. Jesus has a very tender affection, genuine concern. And instead of recoiling back and going the opposite way, he reaches out. He does the opposite of what everyone expects him to do. He reaches out and he touches him. Jesus, and I still don't know why they use the word indignant. Jesus is moved with pity. He feels compassion. He reaches out his hand and touched the man. I do want to. I am willing. Be clean. So this was a combination of touch and voice. Now, Jesus breaks all social rules by touching him. I suppose you could ask, did he break the law? But I won't ask.
Have you noticed that when there's been so many times that he did a cleansing or whatever it was, and he said, no, showing or no. And that's exactly what they did.
They did the opposite.
They just made a beeline for wherever they could go.
Yes.
Did he need that?
I think he did, yes. But I believe his request is genuine. He doesn't want the word to get out about the faith healing part like it does. I don't think he's trying to cover who he is or what he really does. I think he just doesn't want to be known as that faith healer.
Roddy, a couple of different things that I see is that he requested to be clean, be cleansed. But he'll go tell people he was healed.
Yes.
So there's two different things going on.
Yes. Yes, there is.
And it could be why Jesus was putting the restriction on him, because they wouldn't have a full explanation of his healing.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, healing is one thing, but cleansing is more a cleansing of the soul and the body. But healing is just fixing the body. Does that make sense? You can, and that's cleansing. Well, as Jesus touches him, instead of Jesus being defiled, what happens? The man is cleansed. Jesus is not defiled by the disease. Jesus cleanses the man.
One of the things that comes to my mind in reading this has to do with, it's against the law to have any kind of touch, and then that's responsibility. Then you go back to the priest, you go in quarantine for a period of time. Now, Jesus was never, applied to those with authority, never did approach him and demand that from him. Obviously, I'm thinking the power that he was possessing and showing, no one wanted to deal with that aspect.
Right.
But in reality, if anyone normally would do that, then
Oh, they were all over him, yeah. Well, Jesus very sternly tells the man to keep what just happened to him quiet. Go to the temple in Jerusalem, get a clean bill of health, do everything you're supposed to do. To re-enter society, a leper had to be assessed by a Jewish priest. And although a priest could declare someone clean, only Jesus could actually make them clean. And the man is disobedient. He does not comply with Jesus' request. Instead, he spreads the news of his cleansing to whomever will listen. In fact, the Greek word for spreading the news, verse 45, instead he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. It's the same word for preaching in many other texts. That's what he did. He went out and preached it. This guy preached to whoever would listen. So much so that what happened? What was the consequence of it?
No privacy for Jesus.
No privacy. He couldn't go anywhere. Jesus couldn't enter into a town freely, it says. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places.
So he was an A-list celebrity.
He was. Now, I think there are two things. Number one, he is also complying with the staying away for a while, because he had just touched someone who had leprosy. But Jesus takes the burden of the leper and puts it on himself. That's what we usually miss in the story. Jesus trades places with the guy. The guy is now in town socializing and preaching, and Jesus is now on the outside of town with the curse of a leper. You see that? He took the burden of the leper on himself and traded places. That's the cleansing touch of Jesus. With a touch, he could cleanse. And it shows his compassion. But he gave the man more than just physical healing. He gave him compassion, concern. He gave the man the ability to re-enter society, to move back into his house with his family, to support himself with a job in the marketplace, to be able to go to the temple and worship again, or the synagogue. He gave this man back his life with a cleansing touch. So let me ask, who are the modern day lepers that need our compassion? Because I don't think we're supposed to read this story and just say, wow, that was awfully nice of Jesus. Sinners.
Say our neighbor,
Our
friend,
neighbors.
our coworker.
Yes. I was reading about a youth minister at a church in Colorado. His father wrote a book called Burden of a Secret. The dad's name is Jimmy Allen, but it's not the Jimmy Allen at Harding, I don't think. Burden of a Secret, a family's journey through the shadow of AIDS. Scott was the youth minister. His wife Lydia became infected with the AIDS virus through a blood transfusion. And it would be years before they even knew it. They had 2 children, Matthew and Brian, 2 boys. Brian was born, doctors finally discovered through that birth that she had HIV. And when Scott told the church, he was fired on the spot.
And she cheated on him.
Well, this was a few years ago, and it was just, AIDS was scary.
We had, just a minute, we had a couple at Carbondale Church, Joe Wickham and his wife. They had 2 boys, David and Joey. They both had, but they were hemophilia.
Mm-hmm.
And they could say hemophilia and go right over people's head because they saw instead of understanding.
Right.
And that mother took each one of those boys and they came and lived with her the last part of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And she took care of them. And when they died, she had the arrangements with a funeral parlor and a doctor that she washed them. She put them in wrapped clean sheets around them and then called.
She had compassion. Yeah.
And it was so difficult because it took a while to realize what the problem was, but not that long, and she can give you all the medical information you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Our brains are they still want to go to that part, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
I'm not
We have a tendency to jump to the worst conclusion.
And she just aired them.
Well, that is a powerful story, and she definitely showed compassion. Back to this story, Brian, the youngest child, dies of AIDS as an infant. Soon after that, Mom, Lydia, Scott's wife, also died of AIDS. And they tried to find a church home. They tried to find a community of a church to worship with. Nobody wanted them. Nobody wanted them there. Eventually, Matthew also died of AIDS. That left Scott, who used to be a youth minister, that left him a widower and childless to a disease. It also left him bitter. He didn't experience the cleansing touch of Jesus through Christ's body. That makes sense? Who or what is Christ's body? The church. So we are supposed to be using that cleansing touch. We are His hands, in essence. We are to be using that cleansing touch. Even though it's not exactly the same, we can't cleanse, but we can offer the cleansing. Who are the modern day lepers that need the cleansing touch of Jesus through us? The former sexually immoral. People in our culture look at whomever they look at as spoiled goods. Jesus didn't. The story is told, and I've heard it told different ways. Someone comes into a church, doesn't look like everybody else. Looked like a hippie, if you will. But he came into church, no shirt, no shoes, just a pair of jeans. Right off the street. Walked right down front. The church service is going on. Sat cross-legged right down in the front on the ground. And everybody sat there stunned. Even the preacher stopped, or the song leader, whoever was up. And pretty soon, all you could hear was the click, the tap of a cane. One of the oldest men in the congregation, sitting in the back, got up, made his way down to the front, and sat down cross-legged right beside him. That's compassion. That's what Jesus would have done. Whereas a whole lot of folks would, hey, let's get that guy out of here.
I have a story that happened in a small congregation, I think a number of years ago. So many years ago, I don't want to tell you because they figure out how old I am. But anyway, that was back in the time where women were wearing pantsuits,
Mm-hmm.
or just begin to wear pantsuits.
Mm-hmm.
And we had one of the elders meet her at church and said that she could come to church with a pantsuit. And obviously, never saw her again. I remember tying that story together. I remember a preacher preaching against long hair to the point where, and it was a youth meeting, where you had 200 youth in there, and most of them had long hair, and preaching a sermon on how simple it was, and that obviously there's a correlation to that kind of story you just told.
Yeah.
So it's just different,
Right.
where the church takes it upon themselves and say, well, God has no business dealing with you.
That story that you said actually happened in Tuscaloosa with an elder.
Mm-hmm.
One of the students came from the University of Alabama
Mm-hmm.
and looked like that. He sat down, that's a big church, 3,000, whatever.
Sure.
And the elder got up, went down there, took his jacket off, went down to the front, like with God, and sat right down with him, and the chair coming in together.
Beautiful story, isn't it?
Yeah, and he became, I don't know if he became a Christian, but he was there all the time after.
We are to show compassion. Well, we're going to move to Mark chapter 2 next week. Let me encourage you, if you haven't done it lately, read all the way through Mark in a single sitting. Doesn't take very long. Took me about an hour. So I'm going to challenge you to that this week. If you don't have an hour, try reading a few chapters at a time. Get the bigger picture. That's what I'm asking you to do. Because we only, we're splitting up sections that really were designed to go together. Because it's limited time and we're trying to teach it a little bit in depth. And you'll pick up on some things when you read it as a whole story. One of the things that I picked up on, it's divided into two halves. The first half of the book is asking, who is this man? That's the question being asked. Who is this guy, Jesus? And the second half asks, why did he come? Who is he? Why did he come? See if you gather that. Final thoughts? Okay, next week we'll start chapter 2. We're going to talk about his purpose, his practice, and his power.